terrible. And then I kid you not, the Lechem I stood for 7 minutes behind the car, who wouldn't back off because the bus was ahead of him. He's blaming the bus. Baruch Hashem to the tensions living and welcome to tensions in Israel. It's not normal. No, I just came from Australia two nights ago, and the Tarbut Nihiga there is very different, very very different. People, oh my gosh, I wouldn't live there. I love Israel, but it's a different world. It's a different world. It's just That's a problem. That is true. They're a bit confused. But you try to change lanes, they actually stop it, you in. Here they speed up at home. Shalom. Unbelievable. And I apologize once again. Come as my 11:30. 12, okay, great, no problem. Alright, okay. We'll do the best, okay. So Shalom Aleichem, my name is Noam Himelstein. Nice to meet everybody over here. I was at Torah Mitzion Shaliach in Melbourne, 2001-2004. And as Zev Schwartz like to say, Pam Shlichut, always b'shlichut, so the Kesha continues with the Torah Mitzion. Baruch Hashem. So again, I apologize for the tardiness, and we'll see what we can get through. Bezrat Hashem.
You knew you got stuck in traffic.
No, all right. No, it's not beseder mitzvah. It's not beseder. I should have factored it out. I didn't. Listen, Torah. Okay. The topic I chose today is a topic that, on the one hand, everybody knows. Tefillat HaDerech. You get into a car, you get into a plane, whatever it is, you're journeying. You say Tefillat HaDerech. However, I did think that it might be interesting to go back to the original text and the sources in the Gemara, to do an analysis of understanding where it's coming from, to understand a little bit more what's going on with Tefillat HaDerech, and try to figure out some little bit nafkaminas halacha l'maaseh. I'm just going to put my phone over here for the time because my watch isn't so clear. There we go. Okay, very good. Okay, here we go. Yeah, there was handouts. Yeah. I hope it came out well. I had to organize the daf from overseas. They told me to translate the sources, so it came out a bit balagan. I hope it came out all right. We'll see. Okay, Beseder Gemor. Let's begin with the source for Tefillat HaDerech. The source for Tefillat is source number 1. The Gemara Masechet Brachot. The texts have been translated into English. If you don't like it, ask my good friend Chad. Tell him, if you're trying to go to ChatGPT. He did translation in English. I put the daf together. So I'm going to read off obviously in the original text, but you can follow along in English if you wish. Amar Eliyahu le Rav Yuda Achved de Rav Salah Chasid. Rav Eliyahu said to Rav Yuda, the brother of Salah the Chasid, Lo tirtach v'lo techta, lo tir v'lo techta. Don't, as Rashi explains, don't get angry. Because if you get angry, you sin. Not a good thing to get angry. Lo tir v'lo techta means don't get drunk. If you get drunk, you sin. Also not a good thing. Uchshata yetzel haderech himalech bekoncha v'tzei. And when you go on in a journey, you should consult with your Creator and then go out. What does that mean? What does that mean? You consult with your Creator. That's Tefillat HaDerech. When a person goes on a journey, you should ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu first if it's okay, and that's the source for Tefillat HaDerech. It manifests itself, this request to Himalech ben Kolchat, to consult with your Creator, manifests itself through Tefillat HaDerech. V'amar Rabbi Yaakov v'amar Rav Chizda, kol yitzel HaDerech. Anybody goes on a journey has to daven Tefillat HaDerech. My Tefillat HaDerech, what does that mean? Or how is not what is it? Now what is it? What is it Tefillah? And this is the source for the different versions of Tefillat HaDerech that we have. But here's the source. It says b'chein l'shalom v'tatzileni mikav kol yevoreh b'derech v'tishtach v'rocha b'masei yadai v'tideni l'chesed v'rachamim v'necha v'nekorai baruch Hashem shemei tefillah. I'm sure everybody here is pretty familiar with that basic text. That is the basic text of Tefillat HaDerech, that we're praying to God that we should journey and in peace and go in peace and save us from the enemy, save me from my enemies. Send me a bracha, give me the chesed rachamim before you. Baruch Hashem shemei amar Abaye. Abaye makes a correction to this text. La'olam nishatif inish nefshei b'hadei tzibura. A person should always include himself together with the community. If you notice, the text version of Rabbi Yaakov was in singular. Shetolicheini, v'tatzideini, v'tisbecheini, v'tatzideini. It's all me. Abaye says, no, that's not the way to do it. When you daven, you should always include yourself amongst the tzibur. Don't talk about yourself, talk about everybody else. Hey Chaneima, how should you say? And that's, of course, the text version that we have today. In the plural. You shouldn't just daven for yourself. When you daven, you say daven for everybody, not just yourself. Eimat matzlei. When should you pray this prayer? if I have a chance later on, depending on the time, there's actually discussion in the Rishonim, and it's interesting. The Gemara talks about matzle, the tefillah. The Rishonim have a discussion: is tefillah more tefillah or more a bracha? So we'll talk about that later on in a few moments. But the version of the wording of the Gemara is matzle tefillah. Am Rabbi Yaakov Am Rav Chizda Mishashem Halech HaDerech. From the time that you go on the journey, ad kam until when? Am Rabbi Yaakov Am Rav Chizda ad parsa. Parsa is about 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers outside of the city.
Oh, so we'll get to the halacha details later on. That is a good question. But I would like to.
Let me just ask one question about the nusach of Himalech Bekoncha. Sounds like you need to ask Hashem for permission.
Okay, excellent point. Keep that comment. We'll bring it up very shortly. Bezrat Hashem. So the Gemara first seems pretty much straightforward. The question is, but you picked up on something correct. I want to address it later on. But the bigger problem is, what does ad kama ad parsa refer to? If you look in the second source, in the Rashi, I'll skip the first 2 lines in Rashi because we said it outside. Ad kama zmana litpalel ad parsa. Until when can you say Tefillat HaDerech? Ad parsa, avalo le'achar shahalach parsa. But not after you've traversed. That's the word in English, traversed?
Yeah.
Very impressive word, isn't it? Long word. I grew up in Israel, so if I can speak words longer than 4 or 5 letters, I'm impressed with myself. Traverse is very good. It's a good word. Good word, traverse. Very good. Avalo le'achar shahalach. According to Rashi, Rashi learns the Gemara that ad kama, ad parsa, refers to the amount of time in which you're meant to say Tefillat HaDerech. You leave the city, leave Yerushalayim, wherever you're traveling from. You've traveled, you're within the first parsa, within the first 4 kilometers, you're supposed to say the Tefillah. Avalo lachar shalach parsa. But if you've already went on a journey and you've passed the parsa, you can't say it anymore. You've missed the boat. Oh, so here I am. You guys are great jumping the gun. I can't even, you're getting the questions out before I even say the questions. I was going to say, what do you think? What do you think about the Rashi bag? Bag is coming up in a minute. I was going to say, which makes more logical, but you've already picked up on it. So let's hold it for a minute, a second. Let's finish the Rashi. Ubalachot gedolot mefarish. Balachot is a book called Behag. He's known as the Behag. Bal halachot gedolot is written. Discussions among Rishonim. Who is the author? Apparently, Reb Shimon Kiara in Gaonic work for the 800s, mid 800s. And the Behag, if you're not familiar, the Behag is quoted by all the Rishonim. Right? You don't paskin today from a bag, but you know. All the Rishonim, the Beis Yosef, all the Rishonim quote the bag for many, many different things. So he's known as the Halachot Gdolot or Bag Baal Halachot Gdolot of Shimon Kiar at Gaonic work. So Rashi quotes him, and he says the following: Ad kama yevakesh leilech sheyeh tzarich litpalel. What is the minimal journey that you should go on, which would generate an obligation to say Tefillat HaDerech? Ad parsa. Afilu nolech ela ad parsa. Even if the journey is not more than a parsa, but if it's a parsa, that would generate an obligation. But if it's less, then you don't have to daven. In other words, Rashi and Bag dispute how to understand the Gemara ad kama ad parsa. According to Rashi, ad kama ad parsa means how much time, how much of the journey, within how much journey should you recite the tefillah? And you must recite it within a parsa of setting out on your journey. And if you do not say Tefillat HaDerech during that time, you've lost the opportunity. The Bag says, no, that's not what the discussion is. According to the Bag, the discussion is what's defined as a journey? You know, I'm going for a little walk outside Yerushalayim. I'm going for like 100 meters. 200, half a kilometer I'm driving. I'm going to Chveisnish, whatever. Would that generate an obligation to recite for the other? The Bag would say, no. The Bag is telling you what's the minimal amount of journey that you need to travel, which would generate, and the answer is parsa. Anything for parsa onwards, you would generate an obligation. But if it's less than that, you don't have to say Tefillat HaDerech. And now the question that you already know the answer to: which perush here, Rashi or Bag, is more logical to understand? Which makes more sense? The Bahag, which says it's a matter of distance of generating the obligation, or Rashi, a matter of time in which to say the bracha? And you said what? Rashi makes sense or doesn't make sense? Doesn't make sense. Rashi doesn't make sense. All the Rishonim ask on Rashi. I'm eating an apple. I'm sure it's happened to all of us. You know, halfway through, oh my God, I forgot to make a bracha. You make a bracha. You don't say, oh, well, I'm halfway through, I might as well not skip. I might as well skip it. You know, you make the bracha. You know, the Rashbat, one of the other Rishonim says, I don't understand. This is a mashal which is used quite often in the Rishonim. Actually, in the Gemara, if you ate garlic and your breath stinks of garlic, what do? Have some more garlic? Brush your teeth. Fix it. You don't have more garlic. Oh, it's like you always hear from my teacher in yeshiva called the Reita. So you always hear from the guys. I'm going to Gehenna anyway. I might as well have a good time. You know, that's not. You did something. There you go. It's good. You know. So you did fix it. What is this? You forgot to say it within the first parsa. Okay, so say it. Why? What logic is there in Rashi that he would say? You might be going on 100-kilometer journey. You know, you're going on a tour with the family from here to Eilat, from here to Metula, right? And like, oh my gosh, I've traveled 4.5 kilometers. Sorry, can't say it anymore. What does that make? Where's the logic in that? So that's the kasha the other Rishonim ask in Rashi. So I wrote you that there's 4 ways of understanding. It's really 3 ways, but one of the ways sort of I'll explain in a moment. So the first way of understanding Rashi is to qualify Rashi. What do I mean by that? To say he didn't really mean it. What do you mean he didn't really mean it? Look in source number 3. Rabbi Yonah, aval eino kemo she'omrim she'im lo yitpalel betoch parsa lo yitpalel achar kach. It's not like people say, i.e. Rashi, if you didn't daven within the first parsa in the first 4th gate, you can't daven afterwards. Ze lo yitachen. That makes no sense. It cannot be. The kol zman sheish lo adayin lelechet, as long as you have a distance to go still, of course you're obligated to daven. From the get-go, you should say it within the first parsa. But if you forgot, you were so involved in talking to your friend, and they're here and there, in the traffic, whatever it is, as long as there are a decent amount of time, later on we'll see you should say parsa. If as long as you have a parsa to go to towards your destination, you should still say it. So the way Rabbi Yonah takes it is that, again, it's not so clear if he's saying it in Rashi, he's saying it in himself. But the first way to understand Rashi, and again Rashi I agree, it's a little bit more difficult. Rashi said straight up. You know, Rashi said, Lo lachar shalach parsa. Rashi seemed pretty definitive that you can't say that. But it could very well be that Rashi or Rishonim who like Rashi, and the majority are not like Rashi, the majority like that, would say that all that Rashi meant was the chatchila. When you go on a journey, say it when you begin the journey. But not to, that's the chatchila. Not to say that if you missed the boat, you missed the boat entirely. No, you should still say it b'diavad. Okay. The second option is to say it literally, that you really missed the boat. This divides into 2. This is why I said 3 is 4. It's really 3. The third option, the second option says really in achinami, take literally. You missed the boat. The question is, can we find a technical reason for that? So the Ra'ah says, Eimat Matzli in source number 4. Amar Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Chisa Misha Sheyochaz Bederech Vad Kama Ad Parsa. Perush Yesh Lo Litpalel Bota Parsa. V'im Lo Yitpalel Ota Shalach Parsa Parsa Mana V'shuv Ein Lo Litpalel Ota. Straight up, if in the minutes you've passed the Parsa, you can't daven anymore. He doesn't give an explanation. He takes it literally. He doesn't give an explanation. You look right underneath that, the Mordechai. We find this, there's a pasuk, something which is crooked cannot be fixed. It's the classic example is a mamzer. If a person has relationships with a married woman, they have a child that's Mishnah says that's muvad lo yuchal. Hey, you can't fix it. It is what it is. Something which is crooked cannot be fixed. So he says. So the Ra'ah and the Mordechai just say straight up something which is broken and can't be fixed. And in this particular situation, there might be source sheets at the back if there's any left. I don't know. Okay, but there's no reason stated. No reason stated. It is what it is. But the Pnei Yeshua, who's an Achron, it does have an interesting reason, and he says the following: source number 5. Bigmar Kama Amar Rav Yaakov Amar Rav Chizda Ad Parsa. Pirush Rashi Avalo Leachar Shalach Parsa. Rashi explains you can only say the Tefillat HaDerech within a parsa, but not after you've gone the parsa. You cannot say it anymore. But and he quotes the back. That's because Rashi quotes back. This is the end of Rashi. Everybody else in Rashi, your kasha. What logic could there possibly be? After parsa is gone, you cannot daven say Tefillat HaDerech any longer. Even though you're planning to go for another few parsas, you might, like I said, you're going on a 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer journey. You've done 4. Oh, I've missed it. Where's the logic in that? To look at Rashi, and we'll see. But that's the general psak is not like Rashi. Most poskim like the bag, because Rashi doesn't make any sense. And the compare shalachas gedolos. Dav sheini kedai says Bnei Yeshua. And even though who am I to say? Mikol makom nir liyashu shitas Rashi. I can say pshat. V'adarabba. Dvarav nechonim ubrorim v'nimukoimo. His words are clear. His words make sense. There is a logical explanation. The time of Rabbi ikaloimar. And there's a great reason you can say. You know, I'm thinking right now as I'm reading this again. When I was in yeshiva, one of my Rabbis once said, when a Rishon says, this is a great pshat, there's no question you can argue with it, it means he's really not sure of himself at all. He's just trying to convince himself. You know? And I'm like, Dvarim nechonim, ubrurim, nimukoimo, the time of Rabbi, great reason. I'm like, I'm not sure if he's convinced himself. After you go for parsa, you're considered as if you're already in the middle of the journey. And pshita, it's clear, ein datom yushevet alav. Your mind isn't settled. Shekol hadrachim becheskat sakana. All the journeys, all ways, all roads are dangerous. That's why you can't daven anymore. We have halacha. If a person's mind isn't settled, you can't daven. Like for instance, if you're an Englishman and you're destroyed after Argentina beat England last night, and you just can't daven. You're like, oh my God, last 10 minutes of the game. You just can't get over it. All right, you can't daven.
But you need to daven too, so there'll be a scandal that they cheated and they forfeit the game.
We're not going to have another hand of God again, I don't think. You know. Anyway, so if your mind isn't settled, then you can't daven. Let me finish the mind, and I'll take the question. If your mind isn't settled, you can't. That's a straight up halacha. That is true. Your mind isn't settled, you can't daven. So the Bnei Yeshua says the following: when you first leave on your journey, the first 4 Ks, you're just getting into things. All right, you know, I'm going. You're focused. But once you're to the journey, like looking around, the car's driving. Are they speeding? Are there robbers here? Or 1,000 years ago, are there lions and
Tigers and
I was waiting for something. You know, lions and tigers. So your mind, you're just not settled. You're not focused. You're on the journey. You can't daven. So before we go to the last option, the Meiri, so what we've seen until now is like this. Your kasha before in Rashi was, why is it that after parsa you wouldn't be able to daven Tefillat HaDerech? Where's the logic in that? And as you mentioned, that kasha that you said is everybody has that in Rashi. So far we've said really 2 options. Let's say the first option is that it's only chatchila not b'diavad. You didn't really mean it. It's chatchila, but you should, as your journey, you should begin to davening, but afterwards, b'diavad you can still daven. The second one said, no, you really missed the boat. I just said A and B. A is like, there's no reason to say it. We saw some Rishonim quote, it was just mubat lo chalid kon, you just can't fix it. It is what it is. But Yeshua is just a technical reason. The technical reason is that once you're in the journey, the derech is b'derech sakana. There's dangers along the way, and you're not. Ain't that time you shevet lav. You're not focused. You can't daven. Question before you go on to the third option.
Actually, 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is, I see distance mentioned. Does it say that you have to leave the city?
Rashi says within the first parsa of leaving on your journey.
Leaving on your journey. That could. I'm going to guess that in those days cities were not that big.
Correct.
Today you have cities like New York and Paris, and
so you want to
you could go, a parsa and still be within the confines.
Okay. Well, please God, we'll get there. We'll have enough time. We'll discuss that. No, because that's a good question. No. Some people say mamash, like there's some folks can say you don't say Tefillat HaDerech from Yerushalayim Tel Aviv because there's always houses. No, mamash kach. But some business, yeah. So, I'm hoping for Hashem to get into practical ramifications as well, please God. All right? Okay. Yes. And second one.
The other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong. On Shabbat, all right, you're not supposed to carry. But if you have to carry something, you pick it up, carry it a certain distance, put it down, and then pick it up again. Would something like that, get you over the parsa limitation?
I don't understand the connection.
Suppose you,
I mean, you're not supposed to carry it. Everything what you suggest in Shabbat is a super b'diavad. We're not to build it right now.
suppose you're going on a journey. You realize you've gone over a parsa.
Right.
Stop for a couple of minutes and then start again.
No, that's still considered the same journey. No, I understand what you're saying. That's still considered a journey. But we will discuss what, do you say once a day or every journey? But in what you described, I still think, to be fair, we still consider the same journey. I'm talking about what happens if you're driving to Tel Aviv? Then you're there for 2 hours. Then you go to Haifa. Then you're there for 2 hours. Then you go to Tveria. Would you say, would each journey require another tefillah? Yes.
If you travel every single day of the week, right, then can you be patzor from?
No, you say tefillah every once a day. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, all right. But we said that if there's a parts remaining, for sure you have to say it. Still, even according to Shita, that you have to say it, even if you according to Rashi. Even if what?
An apple.
I can't hear.
If you're eating an apple, you take one bite. You have to make the bracha.
Nachon, for sure. Nachon. But if you haven't said that you're within the parts of the city, you don't say it anymore. Then that you don't say. All right. Let's see source number 6, the base of the Meiri. This is brought down in one or two different places. I brought the Meiri, and this is your svara earlier. The Yesh Mefarshim, Shim lo berach b'tziato mevarcha ad parsa. Some people say, and this is referring to Rashi, that if you didn't make the bracha when you left, you can say it to the end of a parsa. Misham v'ilach ein ze nimlach bekono ve'ina omra. It's not considered to consult with the Creator. The Meiri. And this would explain the pshat in Rashi. He says the following: if you recollect, that's what you did before. He said, "What's the pshat in the Gemara? How did the Gemara begin?" The Gemara began with, "When you go on a journey, consult with your Creator and then go." In other words, what is the essence of Tefillat HaDerech? It could be that the Machloket Rashi Behag isn't just how to read the Gemara. It's what is the essence of Tefillat HaDerech.
You go start immediately.
But no, that's a technicality. I'm talking about what generates, what is behind it. What's the essence? What's the reason for Tefillat HaDerech? So most of us, I think, today, until this moment, thought to protect yourself from the journeys. It's a prayer to God to protect you. That's what, at the end of the day, that's how you begin the Tefillah, right? God, take us to journey in peace. That, presumably, is what the Behag is saying. And the Behag would say to you, what's the definition of the journey? What's the dangers? Oh, okay, anything less than parsa, maybe it's not so dangerous. There's things you could, we could talk about the ins and outs and details, and hopefully we'll get there. That's one way of understanding Tefillat HaDerech. It's a prayer for protection, that God protect us. But it doesn't seem to be that that's according to Rashi. According to Rashi, what generates Tefillat HaDerech is something else entirely. It's a prayer, if you wish, or a bakasha, or a request, or a bracha, just like any other brachot that we say in the world, or any tefillot, which talk about our place in this world in relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Himalech bekoncha v'tzei. Consult your Creator, and then you go. What's going on here is that Tefillat HaDerech, first and foremost, is, God, I want to change my place in this world. I want to go from here to there. What do you think? Is that okay? You're asking God, in essence, for permission to go. Now, there's only one problem. We're not exactly prophets on, Shmuel and Navi's caliber, and the Navi. If you say to God, God, should I travel to Beit Knesset Nitzanim when I'm going to get in second traffic?
Hello?
I'm not at that level. How does it manifest itself then? This request from God, God, I would like to change my position. I would like to go on a journey. How does it manifest? It manifests itself in the form of prayer. But first and foremost, that's the pshat according to Rashi. Now, if that's what it is, now it makes sense. Rashi makes perfect sense. It's not just a technicality like the Pnei Yeshua said. Oh, after a parsa, you're already in the derech, and it's your mind you're unsettled. It's not technically. It's fundamental. It's the essence of the derech. You ask something before you do it. not after you've done it already. It's actually chutzpahdik. You're supposed to ask, can I travel today? And then you go travel. You travel 50 kilometers. Oh, by the way, God is okay. What do you mean? You did that. You just it's chutzpah, God. You just done it. You didn't ask Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now you ask. Zelo yafeh. So now Dafka Rashi fundamentally makes sense. Within the first parsah, that's a journey. You're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu for reshut, for permission. Afterward parsah, it's chutzpah to ask Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi makes sense according to this understanding. So it's a very different way of understanding Rashi. It's not just a prayer to be safe. It's not just a technicality which would prevent you from saying the tefillah after parsah, but it's fundamental to what the whole tefillah is.
Surely the whole nusach of Yirat Zon implies one solution.
No, look. I'm not. Let's say this. I'll say it like this. Rashi seems, as the Mary says, it's fundamentally it's playing on Himelstein bekoncha. But as I mentioned, clearly the manifestation of that is in the tefillah, which God, we'd like to arrive at our journey. Please protect us. I agree that the Bahag also can't ignore the fact that the sugya began with Himelstein bekoncha, right? So I don't think but I think it's pashut in the Bahag that fundamentally, as we said before, it's a petition, it's a prayer for God to protect us. The Himelstein bekoncha sort of puts it into position, puts it into perspective, right? We're praying to God to protect us because we are in God's world, and God will. But the question is, where do you put the focus? I think that would be between Rashi and the Bahag. The Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah paskin like Bahag and Rashi accordingly. The Shulchan Aruch says, I mentioned earlier that because Rashi is so problematic, most posts can say like the Bahag. And if you look at source number 6, Shulchan Aruch says, Omer ota achar shechzik baderech. You should say the tefillah after you began your journey. You know what? Already right here, right now, I'll just mention briefly. I thought someone asked before. Well, I'll say this right now. Maybe we'll get to the other. What is considered shuchzak baderech? What is considered when you begin the journey? When you leave the house? Or when you leave the city? Right? So that's a machlokas Taz. I didn't bring the sources here. It's machlokas Taz Magen Avram. The Taz says the minute you leave your house, you could say the tefillah. That's considered to be a journey. The Magen Avram says, and this is generally the psak today. The most people do. I know this is right. I think most people you say when you leave the city, right? What's the logic over here? It could be that there's two elements over here in the Bahag. There's an element of journeying. What is defined as a journey? There's an element of danger. If you're within the city, it's not considered to be a journey. When you leave the city, it's a journey. So that's why the Bahag would say that, or the Bahag. That's what the Magen Avram would say that within the city you don't say Tefillat HaDerech. That's not considered to be a journey, even though there's lots of traffic and unfortunately traffic accidents today do happen within the city as well. It's not considered to be a journey. So that wouldn't generate Tefillat HaDerech. And also you need a minimal amount of derech to be considered a journey. Right? That's what the Bahag said. Less than a parsah is not considered to be a journey. So that's how you end up with the Magen Avram, that a journey is only outside the city, and a journey, by definition, is only a parsah. And I think that's the general psak as far as when to say the what the Shulchan Aruch says the Chayei Shulchak Baderech. I think most people paskin like the Magen Avram is not like the Taz. They say when you leave the city. So back to the Shulchan Aruch. You only say Tefillat HaDerech if you have to go minimally a parsah. But less than a parsah, you can say, but you can't say with Shema Malchus, right? You don't say with the bracha Shem Hashem. This is straight of the Bahag. Says the Ramah, and that's Rashi, right? Lechatchila, again, notice the wording, lechatchila. Right? Lechatchila, you should say within the first parsah. And if you forgot to say it, you say it whenever you're on the journey. That's what I mentioned earlier. As long as you haven't reached the parsa close to the city, the place where you're staying, and from then onwards, you would say it without a bracha. If you're within 4 kilometers of Tel Aviv, that's your journey, and you haven't said it yet, you could say it, but without bracha, without shem v'malchut. So as far as the halacha is concerned, so we see the Shulchan Aruch passes like Bahag, and the Ramah says we should take into consideration Rashi's opinion. Yes?
If you're traveling on a multi-city trip on multiple days.
Multiple days, but you're sleeping in between nights.
Yes,
Yeah, so that each day is a separate journey. Yeah, each day is a separate journey. Okay. Now.
Some say that if you're going on a week and you're stopping each way, do at the beginning of your trip and you don't say it again.
I'm not denying that because it exists. I haven't seen it. As far as I know, as long as you're sleeping in between, you say it once a day. But I'll try to say a word about that later on. Yes.
When you're doing flights, you're going to multiple cities. Can you do it on the first flight?
If it's all within one day, I think within
Sometimes you could be on who knows how many.
2 flights. Nachon. No, I think only once. I think once is enough. Yes.
Every time you travel in Israel.
I'm sorry.
When you travel in Israel.
Yeah.
You bench Gomel every time you travel.
Gomel is a separate issue. I'm not discussing Gomel. Gomel is something else entirely. Gomel is a different issue. You should just know in general. I'll say 2 words about a Gomel. A Gomel is a different issue entirely. And when it comes to a Gomel, you know that a Gomel is based upon Psukim and Tehillim, that there are 4 types of people who give the thanks to Hashem. And that translates in Birkat HaGomel. Someone who travels the desert, someone who travels the sea, someone who gets out of jail, and someone who is healed from a serious illness. I'll just say right now, because of your question, there's a big general machlokes Ashkenaz and Sfardim. The Sfardim are very quick on to trigger the Gomel, as long as you were saved from a particular situation. According to the Sfardim, if a person had flu and you're laying in bed for a couple of days, you'd say a Gomel. But the Ashkenazi Psak says you only say a Gomel if there was serious danger to life. Right? The Sfardim are more quicker on that. Sfardim don't require that. So in Israel, I'm scared driving this country much more than flying. Sometimes maybe I should say a Gomel when I get to Yerushalayim. But you should. But that I think is also part of the famous machloket. Do you say a Gomel when you fly? Right. That's a machlokas achronim. You say a Gomel when you fly. I don't. My custom is always not. But I think most people do. But in more serious vein, if really a Gomel is said only like the Ashkenazi Psak after a serious danger of life. Kidding aside, I think flying today is generally safer than driving Yerushalayim to Tel Aviv.
It's funny you should say that.
Sorry?
When they fly overseas.
Yeah.
So I've heard that. I don't understand the logic in that, but I have heard that. Yeah, no. That's the question. That is the question. Is flying over? Is that considered the equivalent of that? Yeah.
Arguing it's equivalent of falling off the ship into the sea, in which if the plane, the environment of the plane is such that you can't survive.
Yeah.
So therefore it's like.
No, okay.
I don't, but that's this kind.
Yeah. You don't say Gomel after you fly.
I used to travel all the time.
Wow. That's interesting. Anyway, so that yes. Hold it.
I came back. My wife and I went to the States for about 2.5 weeks. I should have said Gomel. I was leaving there. I was visiting the States. But when I came back, the Rabbi asked me if I was going to say Gomel.
You said no.
I said no. I really hadn't thought about it.
Well, have you? And generally, have you flown? It's not the first time you've flown, I'm sure.
Hmm?
And generally, have you flown? When you fly, have you said a Gomel in the past? I'm sure that wasn't the first time you flew.
No, it wasn't the first.
There you go. So and you haven't.
I can't answer the question because I honestly don't remember. But I know that this time I did not.
Yeah. So I don't.
You sort of looked at me with a puzzled
maybe.
expression.
Yeah. Joe.
Yeah. So just going back to the issue of it's like I have a lot of objections. I'll say the main one. Like, do we actually treat Tefillah like this? That if you are stressed by something, then you shouldn't daven. Like, it's not just that's not the best time to daven, but like you can't, right? Because suddenly there's a lot of heterim for people who are stressed.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And also, when it says like surely that's talking about like the regular davenings that are machlit for the Kohanot. Like, if you actually like. Robbers are coming at you. You're not allowed to daven to get away from the robbers. Like, that's crazy.
Joe, if a robber's coming, you're not going to daven. No, I'm being serious. I'm being funny.
Okay, fine.
No, I'm being very serious right now.
Like, inside your head, like,
you know what I'm saying? Look, there's no question. There's no question that I think that there is a very subjective element to Tefillat HaDerech. If a person might be traveling on a journey that he or she, most people consider a safe journey, But if she is nervous, I've seen discussions about that. For sure, you did say Tefillat Derech. Then, so I'm not. He made the comparison. I hear you. All right. Does Rashi now? Oh, so now the Bahag, as we said clearly, the Bahag clearly said there's a minimal requirement of a parsa's journey to generate an obligation to say Tefillat HaDerech. Would Rashi have a minimal requirement? The Pashtus is that not. The Pashtus is that Rashi wouldn't, because Rashi doesn't have a source for that. The way Rashi learned the Gemara is that you should say the Tefillat HaDerech within the first parsa of your journey, and you can't afterwards. But does Rashi have a minimal requirement of distance for a journey? The Bahag certainly does. That's the Bahag's pshat. Does Rashi? What happens if you're going 200 meters outside the city? Pashtus is according to Rashi that there is no source for that, and there wouldn't be any minimal requirement. If you go back to the Ra'an, source number 4, he concludes, Aval inyan HaDerech lo natnu bo shiur l'kama derech mitpalalota. He says straight up, as far as the distance for the journey, there is no minimal distance given. In source number 8, the Orchos Chaim says that there is, because he says both. The Orchos Chaim is trying to play both Rashi and the Bahag. Yesh lo lalechet parsa v'shachach lo'omra yechol lo'omra ad parsa. That's Rashi. If a person says is going on a journey and he forgot to say it, you could say it's another parsa. That's an interesting discussion. I'll try to say a word for it about later on. You should say it standing up. Like we said before, you should, according to Rashi, you should say with Shem HaMalchus within a parsa, not afterwards. And some people say, what's the minimal distance? A parsa, but less than that, don't say it. So he seems to be playing both the cards, that you have to have a minimum of a parsa, and you could say within the parsa. Actually, you know what? Because I'm just looking at the time factor over here. Because I just mentioned Vipelo Tabumad, I'll just say something very brief as an aside. We call it Tefillat HaDerech. Tefillat HaDerech. There are discussions Rishonim, is Tefillat HaDerech more a tefillah or more of a bracha? At the end of the day, the Tefillat HaDerech doesn't begin with a bracha. Most bracha begin with Baruch Atah Hashem. So some Rishonim, the Rabbi says, well, yeah, but the Rabbi says that some brachot that are not set in regular times do not need to begin with the Baruch. What's his proof? Tefillat HaDerech and Zimun. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Rabotai Nevarech, so in Halacha, the Zimun it's called in Halacha Birkat HaZimun. It's actually considered to be a bracha in its own right. And so the Rabbi says, I'll tell you something. He says, Zimun is something that you do not on a regular basis. What do you mean on a basis? Obviously, if you have 3 people who eat bread, you have a Zimun. But it's not set like, brachot, that you have in the morning, you have Shmon Esrei, you have the brachot HaShachar, you have this, you have that, Marav, you have the Tefillot. Zimun, when you eat, you have to have the Zimun. When you journey, you have to say Tefillat HaDerech. And neither of them begins with a bracha, with a Baruch. So Rabbi says, you see, from here we see that brachot, which are not at kavua regular times, don't begin with Baruch. Other Rishonim say, what are you talking about? It's not a bracha at all. Of course it's not a bracha. It could be enough kamina, whether there's tefillah or bracha, whether you have to need pelolota me'umad. The Orchos Chaim says you should say it when you're standing. So that's interesting. Say it when you're standing, that might be halacha of a bracha. Tefillah, we don't do tefillah, you can daven walking along, whatever. In fact, you should stand and say, that does seem reminiscent of more of a bracha. So that's all discussion in its own right, but I want to get back to the flow of this year. I wrote to it like regular tefillah, but this might be a good enough kamina possibly. The Orchos Chaim says, "V'shalu talmid el Rav." I think it's Rabbi Rottenberg. Lama tefillat haderech chotemet bebaruch ve'ina potachet bebaruch. Why is it, they asked the Rameir, the Rottenberg, that the tefillat haderech concludes Baruch Atah Hashem Shemet Tefillah, chotemet, that's the chatima, that's the stamp, but it doesn't begin with Baruch. It starts in Yiratzon. That's very interesting. So Meir Rosenberg when he would know if he knew on the day that he's journeying, he didn't say the tefillah when he began the journey in his horse and cart or whatever they had 900 years ago, right? He would say it in the morning. during Birkot HaShachar.
Where are you reading, sorry?
I'm sorry, source number 9. Source number 9. In other words, he would say the Tefillat HaDerech samuch to the bracha Shen Zatzchim Yinalchim B'Lolai, which is a bracha and Birkot HaShachar. Okay? And then it makes it bracha smucha lachaverta. Right? What's a bracha smucha lachaverta? Bracha smucha lachaverta is a bracha that's juxtaposed to a bracha just before it. When a bracha is juxtaposed to a bracha before it, you do not need to begin that bracha with baruch, because the conclusion of the earlier bracha acts as the opening for the new bracha. Right? So, for instance, we begin in Birkot Kriyat Shema. There's a classic example, right? We see, right? We say the first Birkot Shema after Baruch Hu begins with Baruch Atah Hashem, right? It concludes with Yotzer HaMeorot, and then the second bracha begins Ahava Rabbah. It doesn't begin with the bracha. Ahava Rabbah is a bracha. Why didn't it start with Baruch? Because just before that is the conclusion of the earlier bracha. Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer HaMeorot. The Chatima, the conclusion of the earlier bracha, serves as the opening to the brachat Ahava Rabbah. So you don't need to begin that with Baruch Atah. Tefillat HaDerech? Oh, so that's where you place it. But that to us is strange. None of us does this. No one does it to them today, to us, my knowledge. But that's what he would do. That's what he would do. He would say the bracha in the morning, say brachot. He would, to avoid, because presumably maybe because he thought that Tefillat HaDerech is more an bracha, so he would juxtapose it to the bracha v'asher natan esrim nochim lo laila, and therefore he would be able to say Tefillat HaDerech straight away without beginning with Baruch. But I would like to say from here that this sounds a little more. It's not just a question of is it a bracha or is it a tefillah, like I just mentioned briefly a second ago. To my mind, it's also a little bit is reminiscent of Rashi, and that's why it's in the tefillot of Birkot HaShachar, because all the brachot that we say in the morning Birkot HaShachar talk about our place in this world, right? Thank you, Kadosh Baruch Hu, for allowing me to get dressed. Thank you, Kadosh Baruch Hu, for allowing me to put on shoes. Thank you, Kadosh Baruch Hu, for allowing me to see, to get up. Right? There's all about it. That's what Birkot HaShachar is all about. So it would make sense, certainly according to Rashi, I would say, to place the bracha of Tefillat HaDerech together with Birkot HaShachar, because really it's all about you in this world. It's not so much a prayer. Again, it manifests itself in the prayer of Shitol Lechem, etc., etc. But the essence of Tefillat HaDerech, according to Rashi, is about your place in this world and moving around. It actually does fit in better with Birkot HaShachar, the way Rashi understands it, than the Bahag. I'm suggesting that as an option. It was asked before. He would say it in Birkot HaShachar, even though he's only leaving at 12 o'clock. That's what he did. He did. Obviously, he disagrees. For sure. He disagrees with that. For sure. I take that back. Actually, I take that back because I just saw this morning when I was going over the sources. I saw. I forgot who quoted this. Who argued that he only said that when he was leaving before davening time, and he would say it on the journey. So according to that, you're correct. It's not so clear when the Maram Rotenberg would actually say it. Would he say it in the morning? From here, that's what it appears like. But I saw it quoted somewhere this morning. I forgot where I saw it. Who said the Maram only would do is only would be somechet to the brachot when he would be on the journey already in the morning. He had left early before davening time. So that it does. You're right. It does take out the bit of the sting of my point. Yeah.
Out of their way to avoid saying Ptichat Bracha.
The truth is, I have to be honest with you. If I'm traveling in the car and I've got a wafer or something like that or a cookie, and I'll definitely say mizonos and I'll say yiratzon just to make a bracha simon chaverta. I don't always have cookies with me, but if I do, why not? Yes.
I used to travel on the train with Rabbi with Diane Benzi on Tufik, who's Diane and Beitin of Haifa. And then I asked him, when do we need Tefillat HaDerech? So then he said, look, it ends in Shomei Tefillah, right? That's because it's designed to be in Shema Kolenu or Shemona Esrei.
He would say, he said in Shachris in the morning? Yes. Really?
Because by the time we're saying Shema Kolenu, we're already...
but on the train! Yeah. When you're diving on the train, not in Shachris in the shul.
No.
Oh, okay, so interesting.
It's meant to be in Shema Kolenu.
Very interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Thank you. So, yes. Sorry? Okay, okay. So we have 2 or 3 things to get through. We'll see if there's time for that. I have to finish on time. I apologize. So as mentioned earlier, people say, how many times did you say it? So the Orchos Chaim said in source number 10, you only say Tefillat HaDerech once a day, at the beginning of the day. Even if you're resting there, you're going to Tel Aviv, you're resting there for an hour and then continuing. You don't say Tefillat HaDerech again. Again, I'm just suggesting this. I'm thinking out loud together with you. That if the essence of Tefillat HaDerech was like the Bahag, that is first and foremost fundamentally a prayer for safety, you might have argued that every journey has its own dangers. And every journey would require another Tefillat HaDerech. From Yerushalayim to Tel Aviv, have lunch. Tel Aviv to Haifa, another Tefillah, have dinner, another. According to Rashi, that you're just changing your makom, so to speak, and it might be enough to do that once a day. I'm just bringing it up. I didn't lay it down. That's what the Orchos Chaim says straight up, once a day.
Does anybody talk about the problem of Hefsek and Hasakat between?
Interesting. I didn't see.
You finish part of your journey is a Hasakat.
It's maybe I don't know. I didn't see someone talk about that. I might have missed it. I don't know. I'll look at it. Thank you. Okay.
So
The Nusach, sorry?
if you're traveling from New York to Chicago one day, and the next day to Chicago.
The next day.
The next day you're starting in LA.
The next day for sure another bracha, for sure another tefillah. He was saying before I was flying together, several flights in one day. We say one tefillah derech a day. I'll just mention something else. You notice the Gemara we saw the Gemara that says that the Gemara Abai emphasized that you should say tefillah derech in the plural, not in the singular. That, to my mind, mentions I think more of a tefillah of the Bahag. If you're davening, if it's a matter of asking Rishus, ask Yimelech Bekoncha, like Rashi seems to emphasize. I'm talking about myself. The minute you talk about others, this Gemara, by the way, in Brachot is the source that davening in general should be davened with the plural. Always identify with the community. You're not by yourself. You're not an island. All Jews are connected, and you have to connect and empathize with the entire Jewish people. Very important message today. I'm not getting there right. But so to say that the pshat of the Bahag, that it's a tefillah and everybody should be protected, the plurality makes sense more according to the Bahag. According to Rashi, maybe that's the difference between the singular and plural, the difference between the Gemara. According to Rashi, singular might have made sense because I can't ask for just for you to change your position. I can ask for just for me to change. So maybe that's also enough community between Rashi and Bahag. Is it a function of distance or of time? So that's a very interesting question. In other words, a parsa is 4 Ks. It takes 72 minutes to walk that, right? What happens if you're on a... Alright, at this point I'll just say that I'll skip reading it inside because I don't have time. What happens in a car ride? The car zips by 4 kilometers in no time at all. So the Mishabura discusses what he calls Mesilat Barzel, which is a train track. Right? In the time of Mishabura, they had train tracks. And he says, yes, it's a matter of distance, not of time. It's a matter of distance. So for instance, if a person is traveling a parsa, and even if you're not walking it, but you're driving it, or you're taking a train, that would still generate an obligation to say Tefillat HaDerech, even though the time factor is much lessened. Again, maybe we can tie in Rashi and Bahag here, distance, time, but I don't have time thinking about it. What about traveling between cities today? So the Biur Halacha has that very question, and he leaves it with a tzarich iyun. In other words, 1,000 years ago, even 150 years ago, when you're traveling between cities, the danger was maybe wild animals or robbers. Nowadays, traffic accidents is a serious issue. It really is. So, traveling between cities when there are other houses along the way. So on one hand, some people really say that, maybe from Yerushalayim to Tel Aviv, you hardly drive 4 kilometers without seeing a house. So some people say you really don't say Tefillat HaDerech. But I think the general psak is that you do. What would the logic be for that? Multiple logic. First of all, you can say like Rashi, that there's no minimal distance. The simple pshat of Rashi, if you recollect it, there's no minimal distance. You can say that danger is subjective. Even the Bag would say the danger is subjective, and even if the Bag says that the minimal the minimal distance was a parsa, because in those days that was the dangers were within the first parsa, or at least within parsa. But now these dangers might be the whole journey. You can't have traffic accidents whenever. So that might be a reason to say Tefillat HaDerech even whenever you go to a city, even if there's houses along the way. Let's briefly sum up what we said before, what we said today. We saw that the source for Tefillat HaDerech is the Gemara Masechet Brachot. We saw that the wording of the Gemara is Himelstein B'Nchoncha, consult with your Creator. We saw that the Gemara concluded Ad Kama Ad Parsa, Machloket Rashi B'Hag. What does that mean? Ad Kama Ad Parsa. According to Rashi, Ad Kama Ad Parsa means that you can only say the Tefillah within the Parsa. According to B'Hag, that's a matter of the minimal distance to travel. We said that Rashi doesn't make any sense. There are several ways to understand Rashi. The way we chose is that B'Melech B'Koncha, based on the Meiri, is Tefillat HaDerech is not just, as B'Hag says, a tefillah to protect, a bakasha to protect us, but rather a question of God: can I relocate? I want to relocate. It's manifest in Tefillat HaDerech, and therefore it makes sense that you can only ask God if you're still doing it. If you've done it already, it's a little bit too late to ask God, and that's why we understood Rashi. Again, there are other ways to explain that. We explain technical problems according to Yeshua, etc. But that seems the best way. We saw that the Shulchan Aruch generally passes like B'Hag. Rama says we should be machmer like Rashi. We mentioned different nafkaminas that might come up between Rashi and B'Hag. Possibly how many, she said every single journey once a day. To what extent it is like a tefillah? Is it more like a tefillah or is it more like a bracha? Maybe that's connected to Rashi B'Hag. Plurality, in the plural, in the singular, is a matter of distance of time. I didn't get there, but that could also, many halacha ramifications may be dependent on how we understand the Rashi B'Hag. Halacha l'maaseh, like I said, we do paskin that you should say it after you leave the city, not within the city. That's not considered to be a journey. We said that you can say it within cities, even if there are houses again along the journey. You should say it when you leave the city, but even if the houses, generally speaking, the psak of today, you say it then anyway. And that's it. Must be layom. Toda rabba lachem. Sorry again, it was a late. Shukach.
If I may ask, you are associated, are you the Rosh Yeshiva?
No, I'm a Rabbi and Mashgiach.
Rabbi Mashgiach, right?
Yeah, there are three Rosh Yeshivas: Rav Benny Friedman, Rav Yitzi Blau, and Rabbi David Aaron.
My grandson is attending right to this year.
This coming year?
This coming year.
Oh!
My grandson was just born this year.
Really? Oh, Gewaldig! Wonderful Bacham. Fantastic. Lovely.